And again, nice to see all of you. Thank you for joining. And we will start with the watching breath mindfully for a few moments. Then we can try to generate good intention by thinking, us coming here together, become cause and conditions to actualize the three principal aspects of the path within the mind stream of oneself and all sentient beings. And may it become cause and condition to achieve fully awakened state in order to liberate all sentient beings from all the suffering and cause of suffering. And in order to lead them to ultimate happiness or full enlightenment. Okay. I go for refuge until I enlighten the Buddha, the Dharma,
and the assembly.
by the merit I create through this
listening to the Dharma.
I become
a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings.
Sangye
Sangye Chodang Sankritamana Chakchu Padu Dagi Chinin Dike Sanami Dola Anchu Sangye Tupasho Sangye Chodang Sankhi Chodnama Chakchu Padu Dagi Kapsuchi Dagi Chinin Dike Sanami Dola Anchu Sangye Tupasho.
So we have been following the Lama Tsongkhava's three principal aspects of the path, and we completed the first two path, which is the renunciation and bodhicitta, and we are on the third, the wisdom realizing the right view. And in terms of that, again, like others, two others is presented as why we need to cultivate the right view and how to cultivate it. And then the measurement of having cultivated it, more or less in that way. And then in terms of first one, why we need to cultivate it, we finished last week, basically, Lama Tsongkhapa, if we would shortly, condense, say, even you will have cultivated the renunciation, bodhicitta mind, but if you don't cultivate the wisdom relies on the right view, then, one will not be able to cut the very root of the samsara. One will not be able to destroy the root of samsara, which is the fundamental ignorance. And without destroying the root of the samsara, then neither one can be able to liberate oneself from the samsara, neither one will be able to help others to liberate from the samsara. And therefore, also one cannot achieve the enlightenment. And so therefore, one need to cultivate the right view. And in terms of that right view, and then Lama Tsongkhapa says, in order to understand that right view, then we should try to understand that through the understanding of dependent arisings. So I think that was more or less. And so today, in terms of that, how to cultivate, here is so showing the right view, verse number 10. One who sees the cause and effect of all phenomena of both cyclically existing and state beyond sorrow as forever unbetraying, and for whom any object trusted in by grasping mind has completely despaired, has at that time entered the path pleasing the Buddha. So here, while through your practice meditations, while you see, the law of cause and effect, that is unbetraying and functioning of law of cause and effect, due to certain cause, certain effect or result is created. While understanding, while one see that at the same time, the object trusted by the grasping mind, which means, that is inherently existing, the inherent existence is being able to disappear or being able to destroy, when you are able to destroy that, when you are able to destroy that by seeing, non-existing of that truly existing or inherent existence, and then at that time one has entered the path pleasing the Buddha, then that is at that time one has found the right view, and the right view, the path that pleased the Buddha. So that is. So there are many different analysis or reasoning and logics to understand how things do not exist inherently by itself, but here Lama Tsongkhapa explaining, by using the reasoning of dependent arising, by dependent arising. Since all phenomena are dependent arising, therefore, thing cannot exist by itself or inherently. If things exist by inherently or by itself, that means it will not depend on other factors for its existence. If it can exist by itself or inherently, that means, it will not depend on other factors for that existence. But since everything is dependent arising, therefore they depend on other factors, other conditions, other factors. Something that is dependent on other factors or other conditions cannot exist by independently or inherently or by itself. That two are contradictions. And therefore, everything is empty of inherently existing, independently existing, or existing by itself. So understanding the emptiness through the reasoning of dependent arising. So when we understand the dependent arisings, there are different level of understanding of dependent arisings. On one level, cause and effect. Cause and effect. The result or the effect depend on cause. Without a cause, there will be no result, no effect. So as here it says, for example, whether it's samsara or whether it's nirvana, samsara cannot exist without depending on its cause. So samsara is the result, and the cause of samsara is the karma and the delusions. Without the karma and delusions, there will be no samsara, the result. Therefore, the result, the samsara, is dependent on its cause and condition, the karma and delusions, and even that depend on ignorance. So that is how the evolution of the samsara through the 12 link, how one cause lead to the next one, and that one next lead to the next one, the 12 link, and then the result, the samsara, and the suffering of the samsara. So therefore, it's clear is a dependent arising. Also nirvana, also is dependent on cause and effect. Cause and conditions. Without the cause and condition, there is no nirvana. The cause of nirvana is the path. Without the path, one cannot achieve nirvana, and there is no nirvana. So nirvana is very much dependent on the path, such as the practice of Tirihaya training, the path of wisdom, meditations, and moral discipline. Without that, there is no nirvana. And in terms of fully enlightenment, then on top of that, then supported by the methods such as loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. Without those practice, without those cause, then there is no enlightenment. There is no nirvana. So nirvana is very much dependent on its preceding cause and conditions. So everything that exists within samsara, that exists, within nirvana, all the condition phenomena that exist within the samsara nirvana, they all depend on its preceding cause and conditions. So therefore, nothing exists without depending. No condition phenomena can exist without depending on its cause conditions. So that is why it's a dependent arising. All condition phenomena, Then not only is dependent on its cause, but it is also dependent on its parts. All phenomena, all objects, all phenomena, all existence they all depend on its parts, you know. Without its parts, you know, it cannot exist, the whole, the object itself, you know. Again, you know, whether it's a, you know, physical matter, whether it's non-physical matter, such as mind, you know, whether it's a conditioned phenomena or it's a non-conditioned phenomena, they all exist on its part. Without its part, it's, you know, whatever object it is, whatever phenomena it is made of many parts of that object that make it. You know, in terms of the table here, you know, is made out of the legs, you know, the sides, you know, the top, you know, and each of them are again made of many parts, you know, and same thing, you know, even the consciousness is made of many parts of its, you know, many parts of its continuity, you know, kind of the continuity. You know, if you take some of those continuity away, that mind cannot function, and as that mind, as that consciousness, you know. For example, you know, if you kind of break, you know, the cup, and if you take each part of those cup away, it cannot function as a cup. It's no more cup. It's no more cup. It cannot function when you take its parts away, you know. But when you put everything together, you know, all it can become a cup, and it can function as a cup when you put all parts together, and then it has certain functioning. That is how. And same thing, even the consciousness, even just one particular consciousness, whether it's the eye consciousness that is perceiving the computer, you know, that eye consciousness that perceives the computer is made of many, you know, momentarily, you know, many parts of momentaries. If you take some part it away, then it cannot, that consciousness will not be able to perceive the computer, and it will not be able to function as a consciousness that perceives the computer. But when all different parts that make that consciousness come together, then it is able to see and perceive the computer, and then is able to function as a mind that perceives the computer, for example. And so that is same to all phenomena. You know? And so all phenomena is dependent arising because they depend on its parts, you know, its parts. Without its, if you take away those parts, that phenomena cannot exist and cannot function as it is. And therefore, it cannot exist by itself because it's very dependent on other factors such as its parts. You know, the cup and cup's part is a difference. So therefore, the cup is very dependent on other factors such as its parts for it to exist and is to function as it is as a cup. So that is, therefore, also from that point of view, is a dependent arising. For in terms of the self, if you take away your aggregates, you know, your physical aggregate and your mental aggregate, such as the feeling, the distinguishing or discriminating mind, conventional factors mind, and the primary consciousness. If you take all of them, then there's no self, you know, there's no self. If you take all those parts away, there's no self. The self cannot exist and the self cannot function as it is. But it can only exist and it can only function as a self by depending on its parts, which are the aggregates. And so, same with all phenomena. So therefore, again, it is so, you know, depending on cause and conditions, you know, it covers all the conditioned phenomena, and then depending on its parts, then it covers all the phenomena, conditional and non-conditional phenomena. And then not only that, from the mind, from the middle way school, Prasangika point of view, then all phenomena exist by depending on its, the thoughts, the thought that give label to the objects, the thought, the mind that label the objects, that designate the objects. So, when all the parts come together, when all the collections are part of the, when all the different parts come collected together or gathered together, and when you have a certain functioning or something, then there is the thought, there is the mind that label as it is on that basis of coming together of certain parts. And so therefore is very much dependent on that mind, that thought that give the label, So therefore all objects are dependent, very much dependent on that thought, the mind, that label as it is, on the basis of those collections coming together. And so therefore, again, it's dependent on that. For example, the computer, someone come with certain thought, idea, how to develop such technologies, first something come in their mind, they have visions, dream, how to create these kind of technologies, then they start to work on that, and then they started to produce, with each part, thousands of different parts that make these technologies, and then, they are able to put all this together, all these different parts, which has different functionings. And so when they put all together, and then it has certain functioning of this functional, the computer, and that new product is being produced, new product is being produced. And then, we would have found it, or, then someone labeled, this is the computer. And that is how the computer exists, Before that, it has been labeled as a computer, If someone asks you to bring a computer, you wouldn't know what to bring. You wouldn't know what to bring. When you see the computer, you don't have any concept of, oh, I'm looking at a computer, or I'm seeing a computer. You see something there, but you don't know. You don't have any relationship as a computer. It doesn't, into your mind, it doesn't appear as a computer. It doesn't relate as a computer. When someone asks you to bring a computer, you wouldn't know. But the moment, whoever produce or whoever decide after being produced, saying, now we are going to call these objects, label as a computer. From that moment, then anyone who see that, then they say, oh, there is computer. And someone asks you to bring computer, then they are able to recognize the objects and to bring the objects, to identify and bring the objects, correctly. And then we are able to communicate correctly. And it only happens after giving the label, And so therefore, on the basis of all these different parts that make it to function in certain way, it has special, unique functioning of, and when bring together and that functioning, and then the mind, the thoughts label as a computer, and that is how then from that moment it exists as a computer. From that moment it exists as a computer. From that moment, then we all kind of relate it as a computer. And so therefore, it's very dependent on the thoughts, the concept that label as a computer. And therefore, it's a dependent arising, depending on that label, that thought, to exist this object as a computer. As a computer. And that apply to all the objects, all the phenomena, everything that exists. Everything is and so therefore, again, because this object not only depends on its cause condition, is dependent arising because it depends on its cause and conditions, such as all the raw material that you need to make it, the people who created it, all of that, so it depends on all these cause conditions. Therefore is dependent arising. It depends on its parts, the screen, each of those inside, each of those, what you call the engine, whatever you call the battery, the engines, the wire, everything, chips, different kind of chips, it depends on all of that for this computer to exist as computer and function as a computer. So therefore it's dependent on its parts. Not only is it dependent on all these parts, collection of all these parts, it is also dependent on the mind, the thought, that label as a, having put together, label as a computer. And so therefore is all dependent arisings. And therefore, since it can only function, it can only exist by depending on all those many different factors, therefore, something that is dependent on other factors for its functioning and existence, it cannot exist by itself. By itself. By itself means without depending on others. It cannot exist inherently or independently, because something exists independently, it doesn't have to depend on other factors. And same with inherently. If it exists inherently, then you don't depend on any other thing, any other conditions and factors. And therefore, since they all depend on other factors, since they are dependent arising, therefore, all these objects are empty of inherent existence, empty of existence by itself, empty of independent existence. So that is the, you try to understand the emptiness. You try to understand the emptiness of the object by reasoning of dependent arising. They are empty of inherent existence. They are empty of existence by itself because they are dependent arisings, because they depend on other factors, conditions. Through that analyze, reasoning, logic, then you come to understand, they do not exist independently, inherently by itself. That is how, so by using that dependent arising and the reasons to understand the emptiness. So here Lama Tsongkhapa explaining from the dependent arising point of view here to understand the emptiness. And when you understand that, then two things. When you understand the emptiness from the point of dependent arising, then one, there's no more grasping of inherent existence of the objects when you understand is empty of inherent existence. So there is no more grasping of inherent existence of the object or independent existence of the object or the object existing by itself. The moment you realize is empty of all of that existence because they are dependent arising. So that is where it says, for whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind, that is, grasping mind is grasping truly existing, inherent existing, has completely disappeared, At the same time, because you understand is dependent arisings, therefore you understand due to certain cause and conditions, certain result is produced. And that is the cause and effect, unbetraying of cause and effect. When you engage in particular cause, it will lead to particular result, specific cause leading to specific result. So you also understand that, So you also understand unbetraying, unfallibility of the law of cause and effect. And when you understand those two things, both, then that is when you have entered the path that pleased the Buddha. And that is because you have found the right view, because you have cultivated the wisdom, realizing the right view that can act as a antidote towards the very root of the delusion, the root of the samsara. And when that happens, then the Buddha is extremely pleased, because the whole Buddha's teachings, the reason why he taught is to show the path to individual sentient beings so they can start to free themselves from the samsara and cause of samsara. And now they are seeing, now you have done that. Now you are in process of that. Now you have started the path, and so that this is like the parents wish to child to study well or do good in whatever, And when they start, when they see the children doing that themselves, it will give so much pleasure and please the parent, And so that is here. And especially, in Prasangika, the Nagarjuna's view on right view or emptiness is, not only, we all spoke about all those three levels of dependent arisings, but all are, also mutually dependent arisings. And we can take few examples of that, that nothing exists as it is by itself. Nothing can exist as it is by itself. Okay. Things can exist only by depending on other factors and, mutually, depending on each other. There's no reference and there's no way of understanding the concept of going unless there's concept of coming. And vice versa. In order to have this understanding and the concept of coming, And to have that reference, it has to have the concept of going. Only in relation to the going, there's coming. Only in relation to coming, there's going. Only in relation to the big, there is small. Otherwise, there wouldn't be small. The concept of small, to reference to be as small. Also, in order to, without the small, there's no big. So they are mutually dependent on others. Without small, there's no big. Without big, there's no small. Without here, there's no there. Without there, there's no here. Without good, there's no bad. Without bad, there's no good. Good is dependent on bad. Bad is dependent on good. Here is dependent on others. Others dependent on here. We are dependent on others. Others are dependent on we. If there's no others, there's no concept of we. If there's no we, there's no concept of others. So all phenomena, if we look at, then they all are mutually dependent arising. But the problem with us is, whatever we see, good or bad, small, big, coming, going, here, there, to our ignorance, to our mind, there's the appearance of whatever object it appears by existing by itself without depending on the other factors. And not only there's appearance, then we really grasp and believe that is the case. And due to that, then our mind becomes very rigid. Our mind becomes very rigid. Because, our mind becomes very rigid because this is small. This is small, by itself, This is absolutely small, or this is absolutely big. This is absolutely good, or this is absolutely bad, or is bad by itself, or good by itself, instead of understanding it only in relation to something is good or bad. And so that is where then our mind becomes very rigid, But once you have understanding of that, everything exists, in mutually dependent, in relation to other objects, then our mind can become much more flexible, only a little more flexible, And that's when you have realization of emptiness, your mind becomes very flexible, instead of being so rigid at the moment, For example, what is coming, what is going? Just give you one example, Let's say my act of moving my feet, steps, okay? That my act of, my feet or the foot stepping, moving, is that coming or going? Is that act coming or going? Is neither coming, is neither going. Is neither coming, is neither going. Is only coming in relation to someone from the other side who see me coming that way. Is going only in relation to someone who see me going from this side to there. For example, from here to there. I'm going from this side, from this perspective, in relation to this, I'm going. From that perspective, from that relation, I'm coming. Who is right, who is wrong? They both are right in their own way. From that perspective, is coming. From this perspective, is going. but the act itself is neither coming or going by itself. That act's only going because of certain, from that, in relation to something else, from that perspective. Is only going, is act of going only in relation to something from this perspective. And so from when you look from this side. And so, but the action itself is neither coming nor going. Do you think so? And so if that is the case, then that is the same with all others too. Small, big, bad, good, everything. You know, is this small or good? Is this small or big? You know, this pain is neither big or neither small. Is big in relation to something which is smaller. This is big in relation to this, okay? In relation to lip bulb, this is smaller, this pain is bigger. But in relation to this something, the text is small. But it by itself is neither big or small. You can only talk about this being small or big only in relation to another object. But it is neither small or big by itself without in relation to other, without relating to others. And that can apply for all of that. And so, but that is not, it appeared to our mind normally, isn't it? When something appears good, small or big, to us, it is big by itself. It's small by itself. And we grasp and believe in that. And something appear good, then again, we grasp it as absolutely good by itself. Something appear bad, then absolutely it appear and we grasp as to be absolutely bad by itself. And that is where our mind becomes very fixed and rigid. But when you understand this neither big and small, then your mind becomes much more flexible. It's not so fixed and rigid. So that is again, how everything exists only in, relatively, nothing exists absolutely as it is or by itself. Everything exists in mutually, depending on mutually, mutually dependent arisings. There's object because there's subjects. The object exists in relation to the subject. Subject exists in relation to the objects. If there's no object, there's no subject. If there's no subject, there's no object. When we talk about subject, then we are talking about something. It is something that is perceiving the objects. So if there's no objects, then there's nothing to be perceived. Therefore, it can't be subject. But then if there's no subject that's perceiving object, then again, it can't be object because there's no perceive, something that perceive that, And so again, subject and object. So that is some of the example in how everything is depending on, mutually dependent arising. And so from all those different point of view, as you reflect, contemplate from all those different point of view, how all phenomena are dependent arising. And because they all are dependent arising, because they all, to exist depend on other factors, therefore they are dependent on, because they are dependent arising, depend on other factors, other objects, therefore it can't exist independently, inherently, by itself. Mm. And through that reasoning, mm, before the object appear to you, before you do that analysis and meditations, whatever objects, appear to you, such a real, by itself, whether it's a pleasant object, the object of attachment, or whether it's unpleasant objects, the object of our anger, or aversions. Whatever object, it appeared at the very beginning, it appeared as so real and so, true, so solid, concrete, bad or good, pleasant or unpleasant by itself. And because of that, then we have strong attachment and strong anger or strong aversions. But when you analyze and do that kind of meditation and analyze, even though it appears to our mind like that object as so real, so true by itself, as unpleasant or pleasant, but then, as you analyze that, that all these objects, exist only independent on other factors. And once you realize those are dependent on other factors, then you realize they cannot exist independently, inherently, by itself. And that strong appearance and grasping of that truly inherent independent existence will disappear in that your mind in that moment when you do that meditations, analysis, and come to some kind of sense of emptiness and spacious, empty of that, true, inherently existing, solid, concretely existing object that you, at the very beginning, before you do that analysis meditation, where it appears so strongly, that totally disappear now, totally disappear, and totally empty of that object. And so when we have, when someone's come to that kind of understanding, and then that is when one has entered the path that pleased pleasing the Buddha. So that's what it is. So then the definition of not having completely analyzed the right view, so that kind of measurement, definition of the definition of whether you have completed the right analysis or not, so if the appearance of dependent relations, which is unbetraying, is accepted separately from the emptiness, and as long as they are seen as separate, one has not still not realized the Buddha's intent, the Buddha's ultimate intent. So, you see the dependent arisings as something else, separate, and emptiness as a separate, two different separate things, not only two separate, also, contradicting to each, then, again, one has not, even you see unbetraying law of cause and effect. Okay, and then on one hand, you see the emptiness of, truly existence, but if you see them as a separately, then again, you have not really understood the Buddha's final intent or the right view, correctly, unmistakably. Hmm? That is what happens when you see the dependent arisings, due to certain cause and condition, certain result is produced, and unbetraying that law of cause and effect. While you see it, you cannot see emptiness. When you see emptiness, then you cannot see the dependent arisings, where you feel like there's nothing, there's nothing. When we come to that kind of two separate, those two understanding as a separate differently, and as though like heat and cold, then here is saying you have still not understood the correct realization of the Buddha's intent or the right view. Hmm? And that is what happened to us. Sometime not only we human beings, even the animals realize a certain level of, the law of cause and effect. They know, if they go too far on the cliff, they will fall, and the result will be painful and dead. So they know that, and so they try to not go far. They know how to do that. They know certain plant is harmful, so they try to avoid it, because they know what is the result of coming in contact with that plant. Or they know certain plants, if they eat, when they have some kind of problems, by eating it, they can cure themselves. And so therefore they recognize that if they recognize by engaging that cause, the result, it can cure them. And so therefore they eat those plants. So to some degree, they have certain understanding of that law of cause and effect, to certain degree, a certain level. That's why they try to avoid certain cause, because they know what is the result of that. That's why they try to engage into certain cause, because they know what is the result of that. But while they know, so even you have some understanding of law of cause, and even when you have certain understanding of, dependent arising, such as unbeatable law of cause and effect, but still, you are unable to see the emptiness in that moment, in that time. While you are seeing the dependent arising, the law of cause and effect, then again, that is when you have still not, when that is when you have not still found the Buddha's, final intent or the right view correctly. As I mentioned before, as you do analysis, trying to find out where is the I, where is the self, where is that object within the basis of that object, what is that object, where is that object, is this part that object, is that part object, and all of that kind of analysis. And then you come to some kind of conclusion. You cannot find it, you cannot pinpoint it, that objects within each part, within the basis, unable to identify, unable to find it, unable to pinpoint it. And when that happens, then you think, oh, there's nothing at all. There's nothing at all. There's nothing at all. When that happens, then again, that you have, because it didn't lead you to understand from that kind of analysis, and through that understanding of that emptiness, if it doesn't lead you to understand the dependent arising, the unbetrayal of cause and effect, still you have not found the Buddha's intended intent, the correct right view. So that is what it means. So still you have not completed the analyzed right view. So then next one, the definition of having completed the analysis of right view. So, and so measurement or definition of having understood correctly the right view as the final intent of the Buddha or Nagarjuna, so that one, those two realizations. So those two realizations, one of the realizations is the emptiness, and the other realizations is the unbetraying law of cause and effect. When those realizations happen simultaneously without alternations, at the same time, simultaneously. While you see the dependent arising, you are able to see emptiness. While you see emptiness, at the same time, you are able to see dependent arising. While you see emptiness, at the same time, you are able to see unbetraying law of cause and effect. While you are able to see unbetraying law of cause and effect, at the same time, you are able to see emptiness. When you are able to see those two things, two realization, two understanding simultaneously at that time, then that is when you have correct understanding or realizations. Here's from merely seeing dependent relationship as completely unbetraying, the definite ascertainment comes that completely destroy the way of all objects are apprehended actually existing. At that time, the analysis of ultimate view is complete. So that is where the moment you see the functioning of law of cause and effect, then unbetraying aspect of the law of cause and effect, the dependent arisings, the moment you see that very moment you are able to see, in that very moment you are able to see that object with the dependent arisings, that object is empty of truly inherent existence or exists by itself. On the other way, same way, when you see that object is devoid of truly or inherent existence, so when you see that emptiness, when you see that object is empty of truly inherently exists by itself, in that very moment you also are able to see the law of cause and effect, the dependent arisings. When you are able to see that both together simultaneously, then that is when you have, here it says you have completed the analysis of correct view. So that is the problem with us at the moment, not being able to see together. When you are planting a plant, maybe you plant a plant, and then after some weeks, maybe even after some days or weeks, months, you started to see the plants coming, So you see the cause and effect. The seed transform into the plant, or giving a rise to the sprout and the stem, and then the leaves and the flowers and all of that. And we see that cause and effect, but we can't see the emptiness. We see the cause and effect. We understand the cause and effect in that moment, when you see that, that is why we plant the seed. That's why we give the water, on the basis of that understanding, cause and effect. But the problem is, while we see that, the problem is we see inherently existing seed giving rise to inherently existing result. Grasping inherently existing seed giving rise to inherently existing sprout, inherently existing stem, inherently existing leaf and flower and so forth. So not being able to see the emptiness while we see the dependent arising. So that is where still, that is why our understanding has not reached there. But when you are able to see the moment you see dependent arising, that very moment you see emptiness. The very moment you see emptiness, that very moment you see dependent arisings. And when you see those together at the same time, simultaneously, then that is where one has found the middle way, right view, without falling in any of the extreme, without falling in any of the one extreme, and have found the right view. Otherwise, we fall in one of the extreme and not being able to find the middle way, the right view. The right view is the middle way, free from both extremes. So when you try to meditate, whether it's the self, whether it's the body, whether it's the mind, whether it's any phenomena, where is that self, body, mind, and any phenomena that appears so, inherently so solid, so true, so real? When you try to find is within each of those parts, within each of those bases, and like that, and then, as I mentioned, as you do that analysis, then it comes, you cannot pinpoint, you cannot find, locate, and lead to kind of empty, not being able to find, being empty of that objects that you are trying to find, While you are able to do that and able to come to that empty spaces, but then, not being able to establish, how it exists by depending on other factors, So that is one of the problems, But while you are unable to pinpoint, while you are unable to locate, while you are unable to find, and while it's empty of that, at the same time that it exists by depending on other factors, being able to establish that, to be able to establish that, to be able to establish, so then you don't fall to nihilism, because, even you cannot find that way, but at the same time, it do exist by depending on other factors. And so that, so understanding the meaning of emptiness as a dependent arising, understanding the meaning of dependent arising as emptiness, and understanding the meaning of emptiness as dependent arising, So seeing those two, not separate and contradictions and separate, but they are seeing same. Dependent arising means emptiness, emptiness means dependent arising. Because it's a dependent arising, it's empty. Because it's empty, therefore it's dependent arisings. Instead of saying this is dependent arising, this is emptiness, two different separate things, but same is empty because of dependent arising. Is it dependent arising because it's empty? So when you are able to see that. So, and the particular special quality of Prasangika views, again, it's about finding the middle way, is finding the middle way. So, and middle way is by overcoming the two extreme, the extreme of nihilism and the extreme of existence. The extreme of existence is grasping or believing and grasping something to exist inherently when it is not. And the nihilism is when you believe and grasp that it do not exist at all, even on relative level. That it does not exist even on a relative level. So that is extreme. So those two extremes are the two extremes. And again, here is saying normally, in other schools, where there is mind-only schools within the Mahayana schools of tenets, whether it's the mind-only school or there is the Swatandrika Madhyamika school, Okay. Furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. Okay. Normally, in other schools, the emptiness eliminates the extreme of existence, and emptiness eliminates here extreme of non-existence. And normally, emptiness eliminates the extreme of the existence. So here in Prasangika is kind of the other way. And if you realize how emptiness manifests in the manner of cause and effect, then you are not captured by the wrong notion holding the extreme views. So this is explaining about the uniqueness of the Prasangika Madhyamika's view, the uniqueness of that. The appearance, and according to some other commentaries, the appearance can eliminate from Prasangika point of view both extreme, and emptiness also can extreme both extremes. So that is another, not only each of them, but even both of them. So when you say appearance, that is the dependent arisings. Dependent arisings. And when you understand dependent arisings, then it eliminates non-dependent arising. That means it eliminates independent arising. Something that's dependent arising cannot be independent arising. And so it eliminates independent arisings. And that believing or grasping independently existence or independent arising is the extreme of existence. So it eliminates that. Are you getting that? Yeah? Yeah. Appearance here means dependent arising, okay? That is the way. Due to certain cause and condition, then there is appearance of that objects. So that is the dependent arising. So when you understand dependent arisings, meaning by depending on cause, conditions, or other factors, then you understand it's not independent arisings. And that believing or grasping independently arising is the extreme of the existence. And so that can be eliminated. That is eliminated. That's what it means here. The emptiness eliminates extreme or non-existence. And when you talk about emptiness of what? Emptiness of, independent existence. When you understand something is empty of independent existence, you understand is dependent arising. Are we clear? When you understand something is empty of independent arisings, then you understand it is dependent arising. And because of that, then it eliminates the extreme or non-existent, things do not exist at all. When you understand it is a dependent arising. You understand that dependent arising because of understanding of emptiness. Are we clear? Yeah? Okay, so. And so when we understand in the, emptiness that way, then you find a middle way, free from the both extremes, and so. Then is Lama Tsongkhapa's advising out of compassion, directly to his nephew who requested him for instruction for him to meditate, to retreat when he wrote that, as well as for all other futures followers and disciples. So that next one, advice. In this way, you realize exactly the vital point of three principal aspects of the path. Resort to seeking solitude and generate power with effort and quickly accomplish your final goal, my child. And so he's saying, once you try to study, learn about what are those three principal aspects of the path, you study and learn, by reading, by listening, by reflecting on them, through study, then through reflections, then you come to understand the vital points, a certain of what exactly is renunciations and how to cultivate the renunciations. What exactly is the bodhicitta mind and how to realize that bodhicitta mind, how to practice to cultivate bodhicitta mind. What exactly is the right view and how to cultivate the unmistaken right view or wisdom realizing the right view. Once you have, through study and reflection, come to, understood that and have certainty, then one should engage into the practice meditations. And through practice and meditations, day and night, putting effort, not being lazy, but putting effort, perseverance, through practicing, then cultivating those, not just knowing intellectually, but now understanding them experientially. Not just understanding intellectually, but understanding through meditation and practice, understanding experientially and cultivating those realizations. And through those three realizations, three principal aspects of the path, then, through the path and 10 bhumi, then one achieves the ultimate spiritual goal to achieve enlightenment so that we can be the greatest benefit to sentient beings. So Lama Tsongkhapa advising that to do that. And again, in many other advice as Lama Tsongkhapa, also in other many advice and teaching, he also says similar, at the very beginning, do a lot of studies. And through a lot of those studies, in the middle, try to understand all those different teachings, different practices that you have studied, understanding that as all of those, whatever you have studied, whatever you have learned, all of them being as instructions, all of them being an instruction to transform your mind, to transform your heart. And once you understood each of them, everything that you studied and learned as being instructions, not just to gather a knowledge, and not just to gather a knowledge or information, but them as being instructions to transform and to change our mind. And once you understood that, then at the end, day and night, you put into the practice. You put into the practice, and Lama Tsongkhapa said, I did that way, and you also do that way. I instruct and advise you to also do that way. And so, again, Lama Tsongkhapa, his own direct experience, sharing, how he accomplished, how he interpreted through that way, and so also advising us to follow that way and giving us instruction to how to do that way. So I think with that, I guess, yeah, his cousin, yeah, given to his cousin Lawang Tapa. So yeah, I think with that, then we kind of complete the three principal aspects of the path. So I will open. We have some time. If anyone has any questions from today or from last time, please feel free to, or anything to share.
Geshe-la, thank you for the teachings. I wanted to, I don't know if it's a question, but why is it that we forget? Like, I can understand like the concepts of dependent arising, and but then I forget in the day-to-day life, or when suddenly a negative emotion or thoughts arise. It's hard to deconstruct in the moment. What do you suggest? Using the dependent arising and emptiness point of view of how things exist.
Mm-hmm. That is where we forget because we don't practice so much. Yeah, because we don't think that so much often. If someone is thinking that very often, then you will remember when we, in the moment of that, then suddenly we remember that. But if we don't kind of contemplate on that very often, so then we don't remember, or you cannot recollect or remember at that moment when we need it, and so we have to think or reflect or contemplate and meditate about this, how everything is empty because of dependent arising, time to time, all the time. And so if you do that thinking every day and maybe many times a day, then sometime when you are in that emotion, suddenly you remember that, and suddenly you can apply that immediately because you remember it. You are able to remember or recollect that immediately, and then you are able to apply that immediately in that moment, and that becomes helpful. But we forget because we don't. It's same like everything's, when you memorize some things, you have to repeat that, recite that so many times before it's stuck in your mind that then you stop forgetting it. Even after that, if you don't recite after that, you will forget again. Like many of the texts, prayer that we have memorized when we were studying. many of them now I forgot them, because I'm not, because you don't use very often, and we don't use that, and then you forget it. In the monasteries, we repeat that at the very beginning. Every day we repeat what we have memorized today and yesterday and day after tomorrow. So for hours and hours we repeat that, and then after some time, then you don't have to repeat every day. Then you repeat, once every 2-3 days, and then once every week, just to refresh, so you don't forget. And then some of them once every 2 weeks, and like that. But even that, when I was in the monastery, when I was studying many of them, I remember them, very clearly, But then since, since I haven't been kind of, reciting them, all of them, and so with the time, slowly you forget, and so that is the same thing, we do. That is just an example of memorization, but not only just memorization, even with certain topics, subjects, you have to think about them again and again, and so then it becomes fresh in your mind, and then when something happens, then you have access to that very quickly, or it just comes, But if we don't repeat, if we don't kind of revisit that by reflecting again and again, then definitely, then again we forget. And then when we need it, we don't remember it, Okay. So that is why meditation or practice is important. Meditation or practice means you are just kind of, contemplating or meditating on that topic, over and over, So maybe we have to just make an effort to think about that while you are doing other things. You can make a note, for example. At least try to remember that every time when you are cooking, for example. Okay. Maybe at the very beginning you might forget sometimes you can, and you can even have a small to remind yourself where in the kitchens where you see that all the time. So every time you go to the kitchen, it just remind you of the dependent arisings, for example. And so every day you see that, every day you remind, and you make some effort. You don't have to be in cushion while you are cleaning the dishes, or while you are cooking it. You can still contemplate on dependent arising in relation to that. And then slowly, every time you cook it, you will be reminded of that. Then slowly, maybe even without the sign, you will be able to recollect that easily, because that's something that you do every day when you do that. And then slowly you bring that to another activities that you do every day. While you are brushing, maybe. Again, you can have something to remind you in the restroom, remind you that, and every time you brush it, you see that, and you try to, while you are brushing, you try to reflect, contemplate a little bit on that, and again, and slowly, again, you get used to that, and then every time you brush, your mind automatically go in that state, of contemplating, thinking on dependent arising, because your mind is being kind of trained, is like, what was that? There was some experiment they did, I don't know, with the monkeys, and I think maybe dog as well, Now I don't remember. It was like, they ring a bell or something each time they give you food, And after that, sometime even there's no food, when they started the bell, it's like automatically, they think of the food, when they hear that bell. Because that was before, that was how they're trained. each time they hit the bell, they feed them, and over the time, and then over the time, even there's no food when they read the bell, the dogs or the animal just go in that state of expecting the food. That, and so same way, our mind, when we train that a certain way, then after some time, when you brush, you just go kind of more like automatically that way, in that way. And then slowly, we can expand to other activities as well, and then make them as, so then they all become practice, they all become meditations. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Geshe. I have a quick question.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I understand dependent arisings, your explanation about a seed growing into a plant. So you kind of understand that and see that. And I'm just wondering, when would you be able to see the emptiness side of the dependent arisings for those objects?
Yes. So that is where the 3 level of dependent arisings. So then not only is dependent on the cause and condition, when you understand those seeds or those plant are depending on your mind, and they are merely imputed by the mind. When you understand that dependent arisings, they are merely imputed by the mind, and there's nothing by itself, but they depend on the mind to impute their. So that is when especially in middle way school, you see many terms. Everything is merely imputed by the mind, merely imputed by the thought, merely designated by the mind thought. So when you understand that everything is merely designated, merely imputed, when you have understanding that dependent arisings, everything is dependent on the mind, the thought to impute it. That is when then we have the understanding of emptiness. Because that level of dependent arisings. So there are many different levels of understanding of dependent arising. The cause and as you explained, the cause and effect, like the seed and the plant. That one we understand, but still that doesn't give to the emptiness. That help to understand emptiness. It is a tools to understand emptiness, but still that understanding doesn't give the understanding of emptiness itself. But when you have understanding of dependent arising from the point of view that everything is merely imputed by the thoughts, mind, then that is when you come to understand the emptiness as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And a very great course. I really loved it. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So if anyone has, we still have 1 minute. If anyone has. If not, then we'll do the dedications.
So Yeshua, I'm curious, you won't have any attachment in November during the World Cup for the, will you be able to just watch all the games? I love that example. I gave it to my family and they thought I was crazy.
Yeah, I think I have attachment. I don't have the realization emptiness. So I will watch with attachments, my heart pumpings, my heart pumpings, if my team is losing, I go in the bed, put my blanket on, not watch it. If my team is winning, I will shout, I will have a party,
I will not tell my family that. I will not tell my family that. I will tell them that you've got it.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah. So I haven't overcome my attachment. So I'm still working on that, like everyone else. Yeah. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly gain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that is not arising, arise and grow. And may that which is arising not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to all the past, present, and future merit collected by me and all the merits of the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side by myself alone, who are completely empty of existing from my own side. Jigden kamde pende malu ba kangle chungwe sambe yeshe no kadin chungme tenzin jaso la sowa deso tuje lundu sho. Tu zu chang xin chang kun jia yue ten zin jiang pe wei kun sa to ho de cho song gu wei le ma tu zhu pa da so du jie kun du sha de shu. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you for. Okay, so
Thank you,
Okay.
Geshe-la.
thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Geshe-la, we would like to offer you a virtual kata, if we may. And thank you so much for your teaching. And I hope you will come back and teach us soon again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Take care.
Good night.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.